Well, hello everybody and welcome to Chef's Baking Blog. Now today I'm going to be making, or starting to make, some bagels, and these are going to be a New York style bagel. Now the bagels that we get in the supermarkets here really aren't, some of them call themselves New York bagels, but they're not. They're very soft on the outside and they're more like bread. They're not very chewy. Apparently a New York bagel should have a chewy texture, particularly the outside, the crust. So that's what I'm going to try to make. Now one thing to say is that I think from reading, the supermarkets tend simply to form the bagels and put them into a steam oven, whereas a traditional bagel should be boiled in water and then it should be baked in the oven, and it's that boiling in water which sets up the crust of the bagel basically, because the outside becomes firm so the inside can't expand, so it forces the crust to make, apparently. So for this I have 600 grams, which is about 4 cups of bread flour. Now you could use very strong bread flour because that's even higher gluten, and that's what we want for these bagels. But because I have bread flour, I'm also going to use 20 grams, which is 4 teaspoons of vital wheat gluten, and that will increase the gluten and the elasticity of the dough. Then I have 337 millilitres, 337 grams as well, of warm water, which is about 35 to 38 degrees Celsius, about 105, 110 Fahrenheit, I think. And into that I'm going to pour 4 teaspoons of malt extract or malt syrup. This is going to give the bagels the sweetness that they need for the yeast to activate, but it also adds a flavour to the bagels. And I'm going to use some malt powder when I boil them, which will add more flavour to the crust and colour to the crust as well. So I've dissolved that in the warm water, and I'm going to put into that 6 grams, which is 1.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast, and I'm going to leave that for it to start to froth. That should become quite foamy within about 10 minutes. Then I also have 2 teaspoons of salt. So what I'm going to do is, in my stand mixer, I'm going to put the flour, and then I'm going to put the vital wheat gluten and the salt, and I'm simply going to mix those together. And then I'm going to leave everything until the yeast has started to foam. Now I will also have a couple of baking trays which I will sprinkle with cornmeal. You could use semolina, or you could use ground rice or rice flour. And that's to put the bagels on once they've been formed. So I'll be back in 10 minutes when the yeast is activated. The yeast has foamed up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour that into the flour mixture, and I'm going to mix it on low speed until it's all combined, which should take about 4 minutes. So as you can see, that's now clumping around the dough hook, and it's been just about 4 minutes. So I'm going to increase the speed now to medium low, and I'm going to continue to mix it for 7, 8, 9 minutes until the dough has a nice smooth consistency and it's just slightly tacky to the touch. Okay, so that dough is now mixed and kneaded quite nicely. So I'm just going to pull that together on the work surface. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it into 10 pieces. Now, if you divide it into 8 pieces, you'll get bagels of 120 grams, but I actually want them slightly smaller than that. So I'm going for just about 100 grams for each piece. So I have our 10 pieces of dough, which are roughly 100 grams each, and I'm going to form each one into a ball like that, and then I'm going to roll it against itself, creating tension in the dough. Pulling it on the counter to make a nice smooth ball, and then when I've done all of them, I'm going to cover them with plastic wrap and leave them to rest for between 10 and 15 minutes. So there's the 10 balls. And I'm just going to cover those with plastic wrap. And leave them for about 10 minutes. Then I'll come back and we'll shape them. So our dough balls have been resting, and I'm just going to take one. I'm going to flatten it to shape it into the bagel. Now I'm actually going to roll this out to about 5 inches in diameter. And a fairly even thickness, and that's about right. So then what I'm going to do is take the edge here and I'm going to pull it towards myself as I roll it up. Until I have a complete roll, and then using both my hands I'm going to roll it out to a length of about 10 inches, trying not to make the ends thinner than the middle. And then when I have the desired length, I'm going to take one hand at one end and one hand at the other end, and I'm going to pull them and twist in different directions so that I'm twisting the dough like that. And then with the dough twisted, I'm going to wrap it round my hand so that it overlaps, and I'm going to squeeze the end together, and then I'm going to roll that on the counter to get that rolled, and I want to make the whole thing about the same thickness all the way round. And there I have it with quite a large hole, and that's fine because it's going to close up a little bit. So then I'll put that onto the baking tray and continue to do the others, but I'll show you an alternative method if you want, which is simply to press it down like that and then put your thumb and press through to the other side, and then when you have a hole in the middle, you put 2 fingers through and you roll it like that. Now that will work, but it doesn't have the same tension in the dough as you have with the previous method. So with 10 rolled out, I've done 5 with the rolling and the twisting method, and I've done 5 just by poking my thumb through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap those now in plastic wrap quite tightly, and I'm going to put them in the fridge, and I'm going to leave them overnight, and then in the morning I will come back and I will put my oven on and preheat it with a pizza or a baking stone in the oven, and I'm going to preheat it to 450 Fahrenheit, which is 230 Celsius, and I'll let that heat for about an hour, and while that's heating we will go on and boil our bagels, and then we'll bake them. So I'll be back in the morning when these have rested in the fridge overnight. Well, it's the next morning and our shaped bagels have been in the fridge overnight. Now I had my oven preheated to 230 Celsius, that's 210 Celsius with a fan, 450 Fahrenheit, with my baking stone in, and it's actually been heating now for 50 minutes. So the baking stone should be at a very good temperature. I also have a pot of water which is about 3 inches deep on the stove, and I'm going to add into that 10 grams of baking powder and 10 grams of diastatic malt powder, or you could use a tablespoon of malt extract or malt syrup, or if you don't have that, you could use honey. This is going to give a nice colour to the outside of the bagels when they cook. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put that in to my boiling water, and then we're going to boil the bagels. Now I'm going to do them for about 20 to 30 seconds on each side. The longer you actually have them in the boiling water, the chewier the outside is going to be, but also because the outside is becoming chewier, I think the inside becomes more airy, because as they bake in the oven there's nowhere for the steam to go, and it creates the air pockets in the bagels, I think. But anyway, so we'll get on and we'll boil the bagels. As you can see, the diastatic malt powder has and the baking soda has created a froth on the top, and that's just about boiling now, so I'm going to put 2 in at a time, I think. So there's the first one, and here's the second one, and then after about 20 seconds I'm going to turn them over. And leave them for another 20 seconds and then take them out. Okay, so there's our bagels which have been boiled in the water and then taken out, and I put them back onto the trays. So what I have here is a mixture of onion flakes, garlic flakes, sesame seeds, poppy seeds and sea salt, and I'm actually going to just sprinkle some of this on the top, and then what you need to do is to put these in the oven. I'm going to put mine on parchment paper and onto the baking stone and bake them for between 18 and 26 minutes. You may want to turn them round halfway through, you may want to turn them over halfway through, but until they've turned a nice golden and darkish brown colour, then take them out and cool them down, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the results. So I baked our bagels and for about 20 minutes for each of the two batches, and they've turned out very nicely. As you can see, they have a very nice crumb to them, so to speak, and they have this slight little blistering that the recipes that I looked at all seem to be aiming for the New York bagels, and they are very, very chewy. So I'll have a taste of one. So the crust is nice and chewy. And you get that hint of malt as well. So they're completely different to the bagels that I can buy in the supermarket, which they seem to imply they may be New York style. But they're very soft when you touch them. They don't have much chew to them, I don't think. And part of that is because they don't boil them by all accounts. I think the commercial producers in this country, at any rate, tend to probably just put them into a steam oven as opposed to boiling to form the skin on the outside first, or the crust on the outside first. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, I should say, I don't think there's very much difference between the rolling method, which I used, and the method of sticking the thumb through the dough to form the hole in the centre. I think maybe the ones that are rolled are slightly chewier on the outside, but there's not much difference either way, I don't think. And the ones with the hole in the middle may have puffed up just slightly more, but I think much of a muchness really. So I hope you've enjoyed the recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on to take you to the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.